can you talk a little bit about sort of finding that nuance for these characters and and sort of making sure that they feel complex rather than sort of two-dimensional?
Um, well, we struggled with it for several months in the beginning, trying to find that. I mean, there was a point where, you know, Jeffrey was leaning, it's why we got Steve Martin and Martin Short, you know, we have the comedy and, you know, as we often joked it, you know, we don't think we can make the wacky Moses movie, you know, and it's like, it just didn't seem like we could do that. And it just wasn't fitting, you know, the typical animation tropes that you would lean on, we couldn't. And so, you know, we were just doing some development stuff and playing around with different scenes. And Ronnie Del Carmen was working on, it was one of our story artists.
Oh, wow.
He was amazing. And he did this story sketch of just an idea of Ramesses sitting in the lap of the statue of his father, Seti. And he's way up there and he'd just been told off by his dad. And so he was pouting and feeling hurt and wounded, and then having Moses leaning up against it, really nonchalant. But that said it, you know, here's this guy who really has this little brother who knows how to comfort him and be his friend and take him out of, you know, this pressure that he's under to become the next pharaoh. But that relationship, it was that sketch that said, that's the movie. That's the story we need to tell. And that's why that's how we could move forward. And that's where all the nuances came from, because then we started examining all of this big stuff that's happening. How are these two brothers who love each other? They love each other to the bitter end, you know, and that's what we did. Instead of making them the rivals and the hated thing in the 10 Commandments, we actually made them love each other. And that's where the nuances came. And that's how we were able to move forward. I think it was the key.
Fascinating. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that scene being that sort of scene being kind of the crux and kind of the point at which you guys really figured out, okay, here's where we're going to move forward. Because in the movie, those are significant points, that scene, but then you return to it later after the plagues have begun, and Moses is returning to Ramesses, and it's sort of a darker echo of that same scene, but it plays out differently. You guys do that again, you know, as Moses is leaving to go to the desert and then to Midian, where Pharaoh is saying, you know, hey, stay, and Moses is saying, I just killed a man, and anyway, he runs off and says goodbye, brother, and Pharaoh is, you know, calling for him, you know, Moses,
please, goodbye, brother.
But you do the same thing after the Red Sea.
Goodbye, brother.
This whole thing sort of echoes again, the exact words, even sort of superimposed. At what point in the story was that sort of were you sort of trying to show sort of flips of the coin? Here's where things begin, and look how far they've come.
Yeah, I mean, it was the evolution of their power in the world, of who they became, but yet they still had that, like I said, that connection from childhood, you know, that they were connected that way. And Ramesses, you know, he lost his best friend and his brother, and when he left the first time, and then he came back, he was so excited to have him come back, and then realizing that he didn't come back for him. He came back to take away something of his. And but yet that didn't kill his love for his brother. You know, it sort of made the anger worse. In that sense, it made him more angry, that how could someone I love and who I know still loves me. How can you do this to me? You know, and so it becomes that kind of sibling
Yeah.
thing, and friendship thing. But in the end, you know, what we were trying to do was to show that Ramesses never lost his
Mm.
little that childhood love of his
Mm.
brother, you know. And so at the end, when
Mm.
he's washed up on the, you know, and he's crying out, it's still, you still feel that pain. He's not just a villain, you know, of I'm evil, you know. He's a human, and he had a skewed look on life, you know, that Moses had been changed, transformed by what he experienced in the desert, to understand that the life he grew up with wasn't something that he could get behind anymore, and he had to change, you know. So
Mm.
it was trying to make a human story out of a sort of a supernatural
Yeah.
event, you know.